All right, welcome back everybody to another episode of the CV Update. As usual, we had another week packed with sports news, including the Bruins clinching a playoff spot, more offseason discussion regarding the Patriots and their first round pick, quarterback Mac Jones, the Red Sox continuing their strong play, and currently owning the best record in baseball, the UEFA Champions League final matchup being set between Manchester City and Chelsea, in addition to some general EPL news, and the Celtics continue to show us that they are not a good basketball team with another lackluster week. We will cover all of that today. As I noted last week, with my usual co-host Rohan Venkatesh out this week, filling in his place for this week is Ujan Talukdar. Ujan, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, thanks. How are you doing, Amartya?
I'm doing well. And additionally, I am very excited to mention that for today's episode, we have two guests joining us, Anirban Chakraborty, who has already appeared in a couple episodes, and Lawson Matthew, who is making his first appearance on the CV Update. Anirban, Lawson, thank you for joining us. How are you guys doing? And Lawson, welcome to the CV Update.
Thank you. And I'm doing great.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm looking forward to being here again.
Yeah,
to be back.
So great to have you guys. We have 4 people today. It's a jam-packed session. So Ujan, let's just quickly talk about the Bruins a little bit. So I don't know, today was a pretty bad loss, 5-4 to the Rangers. Tuukka Rask was horrible, 5 goals, but they did clinch a playoff spot. Like, are you concerned about this Bruins team going forward, as they just have 2 more games in the regular season, right?
Yeah, they do. Overall, I didn't think it was too bad. After all, they got off to a pretty good start in the third period, scoring a goal 21 seconds into the period with Pastrnak. But the only thing is, the first line was only scoring. Yeah, they scored 4 goals, but especially in the third period, you had Pastrnak, you had Marchand, and you had Bergeron all score. That's their first line right there.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, what, 3 goals? It was like in the third period, the Rangers scored 4 times and the Bruins scored 3 times, right? That's like a high-scoring period in general, like 7 goals in 1 period.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. But, like, the Rangers didn't really have anything to play for. It's their last game of the season. They're not going to clinch a playoff spot. I mean, the Bruins, at least they have some at least seeding to play for when it comes to whether they could have been as high as 1, but with the loss today, that's not possible now. Now it's just a matter of where they end up in the division, and that which will determine who they play in the first round of the playoffs. So really, I'm not overly concerned with the fact that they're out of the playoffs, or rather they're in the playoffs, sorry. It's just more of how will they play in the playoffs, especially considering who will be the goalie for game 1, round 1.
Yeah, exactly. Is it going to be Swayman or Rask? And I just wanted to quickly touch upon this because this news really fascinated me. Do you see that whole Rangers Capitals early where Tom Wilson went after Artemi Panarin of the Rangers, and then the Rangers GM and I guess the Rangers issued a statement asking for the NHL head of commission to basically be fired. And then the next day the Rangers GM got fired. I just thought that was really weird and just very it's just someone sort of looking in on the outside, just very kind of amusing to watch. It's what's going on. It's just classic James Dolan, right? He's just a clueless owner.
Yeah, well, like I said, the Rangers didn't have anything to play for. It's just a matter. And the thing with the Capitals is they are a physical team. Every time I see the Capitals play,
Brandon Carlo can advocate for that, right?
He can, and so can Trent Frederick, who tried to fight Tom Wilson earlier in the season. But the thing with the Bruins is I feel like they would struggle against a physical team like Washington. But if it were a team that's not as physical, let's say Pittsburgh, I think they have a better shot at that. Well, when it comes to at least the round 1 matchup. So
you would take a chance with Pittsburgh. If you had a choice, you'd rather play Pittsburgh than Washington, right?
In the first round, yeah. I just think Washington will just overpower us in any round, really. But even if you get through Washington in round 1, you might still have some guys that are beat up, and then they won't be 100% for round 2. So that's just that's what I.
So you want to play Washington later on, so by then you won't be as beaten up. Yeah, no, it makes sense. But anyways, that's our Bruins minute for this. Let's discuss the football scenario overall. The Patriots. Obviously, they have Mac Jones and Lawson. I know you, as a Chicago Bears fan, you're a big Justin Fields fan now, right? So what are your thoughts on the Bears this season? Did you like that they traded up to get him, or Like, what are your thoughts on the Bears quarterback situation now?
No, it's definitely better, but I still have my doubts about our GM, Ryan Pace. So if this doesn't work out, he better be leaving.
Yeah, I mean, they have Allen Robinson back now, right? And they have Tariq Cohen. He should be back from injury. Or so like they have a pretty like decent roster around. Like they just need like a quarterback. I know you signed Andy Dalton. You have Nick Foles, former Super Bowl MVP, and now you have Fields. Like I don't know who's the starter week 1 now, because the Patriots are kind of in a similar situation now where you have like the veteran starter, or you have like a veteran guy like Cam Newton for the Patriots. You have Andy Dalton, Nick Foles. And then you have like the rookie now, like the enticing young, promising rookie. So do you see Fields coming in week 1, or do you think they're going to wait, like have him wait a couple weeks and let Dalton kind of start the season?
I think, yeah, it's going to be Andy Dalton. Then if he does bad, I think they're going to rotate in Justin Fields.
If he does bad, like I like how you're saying if, this is when he does bad, right?
Yeah, when he
Andy
does
Dalton.
bad. Yeah, people are just going to start going for it.
Anirban, what are your thoughts on the Patriots quarterback situation overall?
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling pretty optimistic, right? I think I mentioned earlier. I think I did mention Mac Jones actually as like a potential quarterback even a few weeks ago on this podcast. So I'm definitely pretty excited. We all know like the great stuff he did in Alabama, and I know a lot of people are saying, oh, he had guys like Jalen Waddle on his team, who of course went really higher than him in the draft,
well,
and
right?
Devontae Smith, can't forget about them. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think I am of the philosophy that you can only do with what you're given, right? Like it's, I mean, he had great receivers, but if you look at a lot of the highlights from those receivers, they're running pretty complicated routes. They're actually running, like, I remember there was a comparison between, it might have been Devontae Smith and Calvin Ridley in like some of the runs they were making. And you think, I mean, part of the run depends on the quarterback finding you at the end, right? And you think about some of the weapons he's going to have this year, it's going to be a very different team, right? He's going to have guys like, he's going to have like tight ends who can actually really contribute on the yardage. Like Hunter Henry, for example, did find a lot of red zone targets for the Chargers last season. That could be something that's really exciting to watch. He also has guys like Aguilar, Neslin Aguilar, who can really, who might be a little inconsistent, but can certainly change a game and make those kinds of good runs. And of course, Kendrick Bourne. So I am feeling really optimistic about him being here. I definitely think it's good to have. I was at first kind of curious about Cam Newton's role here, but I definitely think it's nice to have a really experienced quarterback to kind of, if not like sharing some of the load and being a mentor, at least, being kind of a stable backing force in case, Mac Jones needs more time to get used to the NFL. So overall, I'm really happy to have him. I think there's a lot of reasons to be really excited about this. And I'm excited to see how he links up with our new signings.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I look at Mac Jones, and you hear a lot of. I think that's like one of the main criticisms against Mac Jones is that like he has such a talented cast around him, and that's true. He did have a talented cast, but like at the same time, I am excited about someone who is very accurate. That's what the scouting report says, and we'll have to see. Like obviously, he isn't like he's more of like the Tom Brady build. That doesn't mean he's going to be Tom Brady at all, but he has a Tom Brady like he's not very athletic like Tom Brady was, but like at the same time, like he does have good arms. Like he has okay arm strength, and then he has good accuracy, and that's really what I care about. Like I don't care about the flashy mobile quarterbacks. At the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes, the reason he's the best quarterback is because Patrick Mahomes is a great passer, just like Brady and everyone else. So that's what I really care about. I don't care about guys who just sort of run around a lot, get rushing yards like Lamar Jackson. He's a good player, but at the end of the day, I really care about those guys. Like I'd rather have a guy like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady any day over a guy like Lamar Jackson or any of these other mobile quarterbacks like that. I don't know, Lawson, what's your philosophy on this this situation? Like nowadays we're seeing a lot of difference in it's like this new trend, right? Like the mobile quarterback, like everyone's sort of into it. Like Lawson, do you think like I don't know, do you like this trend, or do you think like you prefer the traditional pocket passer like a Brady?
I think with the game nowadays, having that physical advantage is what we're heading towards. So a good passer with great mobility is the ideal. But as you said, with Mac Jones, even if he's not that mobile, you can get away with it. And, we still had great seasons from quarterbacks that weren't mobile. And some of the great quarterbacks that we've seen are just pure passers, and, they're really amazing. So I think with this trend, I think people would want to get more physical quarterbacks that are mobile. So who knows what's going to happen? And you just have to be, at the end of the day, you have to be a good passer.
Agreed. Ujan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the first thing critics look at in quarterbacks is their passing accuracy. They don't really look so much into the running game per se. I mean, you can have really bad passing stats and then have really good rushing stats, but the rushing stats will not compensate for the passing yards or passing percentage, especially for a quarterback. So you really need to have a quarterback who first and foremost can throw the ball accurately. And for me, Mac Jones fits that bill. You won't have the mobility like Justin Fields or any of the younger quarterbacks who've been taken in the last few drafts. But ultimately, if you have a stand in the pocket quarterback who can throw dimes, that seems pretty good to me.
Yeah, I agree. And let's just go back. Let's take one step back now. So out of these 5 quarterbacks who were taken in the first round of the NFL draft, so Lawrence went 1 to Jacksonville, then Zach Wilson 2 to the Jets, then Trey Lance to San Francisco, Fields to the Bears, and then Mac Jones to the Patriots. Those 5 quarterbacks in the first round. So which of the 5 quarterbacks do you think is in the best situation to succeed and worst situation to succeed? We don't have to go to ranking all of them. For me, if you ask me, I think Mac Jones is probably of the 5, he's probably in the best position just because you have Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels as your head coach and offensive coordinator. You have a pretty good offense around you, and you have someone like McDaniels who's worked with Brady and is pretty creative with the offense. And I think Fields would probably be my number 2. Chicago has a pretty good offense overall around the quarterback too. So I think him and Justin Fields are put in the best position to kind of succeed for this upcoming 2021 season. And the worst, it's going to be Lawrence. Because why? Because the Jaguars were the number 1 pick. They're horrible. So, I mean, he might be the most talented, or we'll see what happens going forward. But there's a reason Jaguars were 1-15. They're just everywhere around that roster is just bad. You have James Robinson, the running back. He's pretty decent. And then they have DJ Chark. They have some decent players, but I don't know. I just feel him, even Zach Wilson with the Jets, there's so much work to be done for those 2 teams, besides the quarterback. So I think Jones and Fields, those are the 2 I could see having the most impact the first season. Maybe Trey Lance as well, but that's another story. I think San Francisco also has a pretty good environment, but I don't know if I don't know. I feel that's always been a run-heavy offense in general, so I don't know if that's the best environment for a quarterback to really thrive in, because you have George Kittle in San Francisco, who's the best tight end in the league. But 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, they were relying mainly on the run game to get there, right? So that's why I don't see them I just feel the best situation to thrive is probably those 2. What do you agree with that, or do you say I don't know? What do you think on that? Well, let's just start with you, John.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Mac Jones has a pretty good, at least offense around him. When I say offense, he has running backs he could at least kind of dump the ball off to, and Damian Harris. James White is a good pass catcher from the backfield. And then you have the wide receivers, and he should be pretty well protected, I would think. I would say in terms of the Jaguars, that seems to be the worst in the sense that they don't have a lot around Trevor Lawrence. While Trevor Lawrence is a good player, I'm just not sure about the offensive line. I'm not sure about the wide receiver core they have. They have running backs, at least, but it's not to mention they also have a new coach. They could just completely change the system in Urban Meyer. So it's not, you can't just necessarily say, oh, they're gonna, just because they were 1-15 last season, they bring in the best quarterback in the draft class and they're going to do so well, plus a new head coach is going to change everything up. No, it's going to take time for Urban Meyer to get his team to play the way he wants it. He wants the team to do so. And it's not going to just be in, say, 4 or 5 weeks. It's going to probably take a little longer depending on how their schedule is.
No, definitely agree. Anirban, what are your thoughts on who do you think is in the best position to succeed and kind of worst position to succeed for this upcoming season among those 5 quarterbacks in the first round?
Yeah, that's a good point. I definitely agree with what Ujan is saying, right? That I mean, the entire purpose of the structure, right, is to have teams that perform the worst have access to the top talent, and that's definitely that mitigating factor, right? Because I was listening. Well, this was about soccer, right? But one point that the previous analysis on this podcast I was listening to, it was mentioning actually that a big part when you have transitions between managers or coaches of teams, right? Often the first step is often undoing a lot of the damage that was caused maybe by wrong decisions made by the previous administration, and then taking some time to start doing what your own philosophy is, right? So I think that's going to be a challenge for that. I mean, and of course, like Trevor Lawrence is still really young, and I am we were all like hoping that he's really great because that'd be fun to watch. But in terms of the best setup, I honestly think Mac Jones actually does have a really good setup, and this actually relates to a great article I was reading today. It was from Pat's Pulpit on SB Nation, and it was actually talking about how Mac Jones was actually really in line with the type of quarterback style that Bill Belichick wants. And actually, last offseason, there was actually a release of Bill Belichick's quarterback searches from the early 2000s, and a lot of those things he was looking for were kind of those things like decision making, being really accurate, even if you don't have like a huge arm like Aaron Rodgers, right? Like Mac Jones had like I believe a 2.5% turnover worthy pass rating, which was like a really good thing. And actually the Alabama offensive coordinator, I believe his name's Steve
Sarkisian, right?
Steve Sarkisian, exactly. Yeah, he's been really vocal about him. He's mentioned things like when Tua actually got injured in 2019, he actually commented a lot on how even in that kind of short span, Mac Jones was able to really show his leadership capabilities to his teammates. You know, he was able to do a lot of the things actually that Bill Belichick has historically kind of looked for in a quarterback, and the way the Patriot system's kind of oriented around, right? The Patriot system's kind of oriented for that kind of player. So, and of course, like I'm not gonna immediately say this is an easy transition, but I really think that his specific attributes are a really good fit for this team. So I would be expecting him to have maybe a little better of a time adjusting than like Trevor Lawrence.
So I agree with like what you said, and I heard that about Bill Belichick. Just a quick side thing before I get to you, Lawson, on your picks. But I don't know, isn't it kind of weird that Bill Belichick values accuracy and you decide to bring Cam Newton back? Isn't that kind of an interesting? I don't know what that is. Like, I mean, you say you value smart decision making. Is throwing the ball to the ground or throwing 8 touchdowns and 10 interceptions like a very like accurate? I don't know. Like, do you think like that's kind of something that's like a little exaggerated on trying to make Belichick look good and trying to make him look like real? I mean, he's a great coach, but do you think that was sort of like exaggerated a bit?
Yeah. So I mean, like, yeah, Cam Newton would not fill that, right? But also like the Patriots were in a really different position, I think, entering basically like the situation where they got Cam Newton, right? Like I think Cam Newton was more of a like a late kind of decision per se, or like something that I don't think it was optimal, right? Like Bill Belichick really got an opportunity here to actually think and make like an optimal choice from like a draft, right? Because I mean, there were some doubters saying, "Oh, what if he doesn't take a quarterback this cycle?" You know, there were people saying that before he took Mac Jones just a few weeks ago. They're like, "Oh, like maybe he just gonna trust Cam Newton and go do whatever," right? But I think when you're making like choosing to have Mac Jones on your team versus making the decision to bring Cam Newton, those are very different decisions, right? Like when you're having Cam Newton, you're clearly not investing in the future. It's really meant to be an experienced guy who can kind of hold this ship while you get your next step in order. And getting the next step in order, that's where your philosophy actually matters a lot. And that's where having someone who's kind of with the program matters a lot. So it matters because Mac Jones is ideally going to be a Patriot player if it works out for a long time, right? So I think that would be the distinction I'd make.
All right, so yeah, okay, so yeah, it seems like all of us so far have Mac Jones as the best and Lawrence as the worst. Lawson, what are your thoughts? Who's in the best situation? Who's in the worst of the 5 quarterbacks?
I think I had to agree, but as a Bears fan, I hope it's Justin Fields that we have the more success.
But no, I think that's just like a successful situation. I think like the Bears are in a pretty good situation, like because you surround Justin Fields with like a decent offensive line. I mean, the team did just make the playoffs a year ago, so he's entering like a pretty decent situation. You have Allen Robinson, who's a really good wide receiver. Is Tariq Cohen, is he back at this point, or is he? I don't.
Yeah,
he is. Yeah, he's a pretty good running back. He can catch. And then I don't know like who else. Jimmy Graham retired, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I just remember he got that final pass in the playoffs and he just like walked away and retired. So anyways, yeah. So yeah, I mean, and who's your worst of the quarterbacks? Who's in the worst situation?
I think it has to be the quarterback taken by the Jets, Zach Wilson, because even with Trevor Lawrence, I think, you know, if he ends up being the best quarterback since Andrew Luck that came from the first round, you know, what Andrew Luck did that first season, he like basically turned around that organization's fortunes in like one season. And so if we get that similar impact, if Urban Meyers and Trevor Lawrence click, we could have something special in Jacksonville. So because of that, I have to say it's probably going to be Zach Wilson with like this worst.
Yeah, I would say so
so-
too. I mean, the Jets are just like a dysfunctional team too. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, I do like their head coach, though, Robert Saleh, former 49ers defensive coordinator. I think he's pretty good, but yeah, he's up for a lot of work now because that team has a lot of holes to fill. But yeah, no, that's an interesting discussion. Just one other thing I want to discuss. I know it's not Patriots news per se, but it's like the big NFL news. Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay reportedly. I don't know. This is just very. I'm just going to start off and say I don't get why he's so angry with the GM because the team around him is still pretty good. Like they made it to the NFC Championship game and they narrowly lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was like 31-26. And I don't know, like I don't know why he's so upset, like why he feels disrespected. Is it a money issue or just because I don't get like why you'd be upset? Like your team was like close to being in the Super Bowl, and I just don't get it. Like, I mean, do you think like would you want Aaron Rodgers like with like if you know all this type of attitude? Like the reports coming out of Green Bay are pretty bad. Like it's not just that he wants out. Like he's told free agents, excuse me, he's told free agents don't sign here because I'm not going to be here. Like he's basically tampering. He's almost like the reverse tampering now. Like he's telling teams not to sign with the Packers. That's hurting the Packers overall. Like is that the type of guy you would want on your team, even if he's available? Like this type of like negative, like locker room, like everything that's about him seems like it's just very negative now. Like what do you think? Let's start with you, Ujan.
No, I don't want him. That's the first thing. First of all, he's like up there in age. I mean, I know he's been doing well and that, but like having from what we're hearing, it's not. He doesn't sound like a good teammate. Let's be honest. You just can, especially when you have when you're talking about a team who was the 1 seed in the NFC, had home field advantage, and lost by 5 points to the eventual Super Bowl champions. I know it was like at home. Maybe he was frustrated with the fact that it was a home game, and I don't know if anything had to do with like the fourth down with 2 minutes to go. They decided to kick a field goal rather than go for. I mean, that maybe that's part of it, but he had a pretty good season. I mean, obviously
48 touchdowns. He was the MVP of the league. Like he was great last year. And then I don't know if it's a coaching thing. I just feel it's like running deeper. Like I think it's really going back to the whole Jordan Love situation like a year ago where they drafted him in the first round that really ticked him off. But to that I say, look, like the team is obligated also to like obviously they want to help you, but the team's also obligated to looking forward in the future as well, right? Like it's not just like, I mean, the Patriots did that with Jimmy Garoppolo. They took him in the second round in 2014, and that pushed Tom Brady. I still believe that pushed Tom Brady to that next level of like the 3 other Super Bowls he won with the Patriots afterward. I believe that really added as a factor, having a guy like Jimmy G breathe down your neck. So I have no issue. Like I don't get like, it just shows the difference like the feel between how like Brady handled it and how Rodgers is handling it. Like Brady never asked to be traded and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to make this a whole like Brady versus Rodgers thing. I don't want to get into that right now. Like I don't want to make this like a Brady versus Rodgers debate, but I just look at it and this is like the type of like, I don't know if this is the type of guy who's like that like sensitive to this type of stuff, then I don't know if I want him because it seems like he's just doesn't think like he feels like he's like above criticism, above stuff. Like everything needs to go my way. And I don't like that stuff. Like no quarterback should be like that, like ever in this league, no matter how good you are.
No, I agree with that. And the thing is, like, he's had pretty good surrounding cast like over the years. I mean, I talked about how he's gone to multiple NFC championship games. I mean, like when he started out in his career, there was Greg Jennings as wide receiver. Then for a little bit, and I mean, nowadays you have Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and
Davante Adams.
Yeah. And now, I mean, so those 3 that he has now are pretty good. Let's be honest. So I'm just not really sure why he's acting this way. It's really baffling to me from considering they were the 1 seed, like I said, made it to the NFC Championship. Maybe he wanted to go to the Super Bowl like really badly this time because they were the 1 seed. But like if you think about it, he hasn't gone past the NFC Championship game in the last, I don't even know, like since
2010, right? That was the last time he made it to the. He's only made it to 1 Super Bowl, and that was 2010. So
and he won that one. But since then, he hasn't gone back to that was the only time he went to the Super Bowl.
And also, he's not completely like blameless for those runs. Like even this past season, right? Like I don't think he didn't really impress me late in that situation. Remember, because his defense intercepted Brady 3 times in the second half. And he didn't, I think one time he drove in and got a touchdown, but the last 2 times it was like 31-23. He wasn't able to get the job done. And that's what forced the 4th down where they had to kick a field goal. So he didn't really do enough, in my opinion, late in the game. So I don't think he's completely blameless out of this. It's not like he just played out of his mind these past 10 years or so, and then the team let him down. Obviously there are some years where you can say, okay, yeah, the defense let him down. Maybe 2015 against Arizona when he threw that Hail Mary, went to overtime, and then they lose in overtime. But I don't know. I have to also look in 2016 when they laid an egg against Atlanta in the NFC Championship game. And then 2019 against the 49ers, got absolutely crushed by that 49ers team. So I don't know. I just feel like he hasn't really lived up to the par. He's a great player and everything, but I just feel like he's it's almost as if he's blaming, saying everyone's responsible for this except for me. But if we win, then I'm responsible for this. And that's a very bad attitude to have, especially in football.
Most definitely. And I was about to say, he's gone, in these NFC Championship games, Green Bay's pretty much got smoked. I mean, in 2016 against Atlanta, they were down 31-0 at some point. Who goes down 31-0 in an NFC Championship game? Let's be honest.
Well, and Tom Brady was down 28-3 against that Falcons team, right? So,
well, yeah, but I mean, 31-0 in the 3rd quarter against that Falcons team. I mean, they tried to come back, but they were nowhere near close. And then 2019, I think with the 2019 one, the fact that they lost to San Francisco twice in that season. First one, it was 37-8 in the regular season on a Sunday night game. And then the second time, it was the NFC Championship game. I think it was 27-0 at halftime.
Yeah, it was 37-20. Yeah, they were both blowouts. But yeah, it was just really bad that season. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I just get that vibe from Aaron Rodgers. Great player, but just seems not really the type of guy I'd want as my quarterback. I don't know. Lawson, what do you think? Obviously, as a Bears fan, I know you get to see this guy twice a year, probably for the worst. But I don't know. What do you think of this attitude he's showing? I don't like this attitude.
I think over the past years, he's suffered a lot of heartbreak with how his season has ended, especially last season. And I also think with the Jordan Love situation, that impacted his thoughts, why he's being a bit toxic, in my opinion. But I also think it's an inexperience of the people around him. At the Packers, he's one of the most experienced players. And he probably knows what call to make in tough situations, unlike their head coach. And, I think it's the combination of things that's making him being toxic right now. But I can definitely understand why he's doing this. Yeah.
That's interesting. So I don't know, can you elaborate on that a little more? Just because I get it, you have heartbreaking endings to seasons, but that's not an excuse to behave like this, where you're trying to tamper and tell the team, players, prospective free agents, don't sign here. That's not an excuse for that. I can understand, look, they're competitors, and in sports, yes, you lose. Tom Brady's lost 3 Super Bowls, but I don't I never seen him get this angry, or not even Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, he lost 2 Super Bowls as well. Drew Brees, do you ever see these guys just act like that, where they purposely try to go against the team and stuff like that? These are all great quarterbacks too. I'm just saying, I just don't think that that's an excuse for the behavior he's showing right now. He's hurting the Packers, and he's also hurting his own team by acting like this, right? He's the leader, and if they see that their leader is behaving like this, not committed to the organization, that's a bad sign going forward. Our team's going to want to sign with the Packers at all now, seeing oh, Aaron Rodgers is acting so he might be gone any moment now. So I don't know. I don't like this behavior.
Yeah, I think the problem is that he has a lot of confidence in himself, but he's not able to share that confidence with the rest of the team and elevate them. He can make the perfect passes and make Devonta Adams look he's probably the best receiver in the last decade or something. But I think he's not able to translate his confidence to the team, and I think they are lacking a winning mentality. He's lacking a winning mentality in those tough situations, trying to come back and trying to act in a positive way so that, his team should be bouncing back. They should be in the NFC Championship again this season. But at this rate, I don't think they're going to get there at all because of what he's doing.
Yeah,
So
I
as
agree. I mean, Chicago and Minnesota's still pretty good. Like, I mean, they have at least enough of an offense to give Green Bay trouble. So yeah, I agree. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's like that type of winning mentality. Like, I know he won a Super Bowl like in 2010, but just because you won a Super Bowl then, like it's been 11 years of this type of performance, and you're just getting used to that now. You're like, it's almost like that one season was more of the anomaly, and this is actually what you really expect out of Aaron Rodgers. So yeah, I don't know. Anirban, what do you think of this whole situation with Rodgers?
Yeah, I think you guys already like pretty much talked it through. I guess the only thing I'd add is that the worst thing that you can do as an organization is to let a player become bigger than the team. And that's like a really big authority problem. And I know in football, right, when that, or like soccer, when that becomes a threat, that's usually a cue that you really have to clamp down either by benching the dude or just having some really like maybe even some public kind of like, I don't know why this person's doing this, some public criticism or even eventually like trading. So I think, challenging the organization, that's a really, I mean, for something that keep in mind, he hasn't really been fully transparent about what exactly he's frustrated about. It's all been either through other mouthpieces or just like speculation. Like we all know this way he's thinking. He hasn't said it yet, right? So it's a really big call. I'm not totally sure what he's trying to get out of it, because when you go against an organization like that, you're not really giving them a lot of choices on how to respond.
Exactly. Like you're just like going after the GM, and then you're calling him Jerry Krause, who's like the Bulls GM of the Chicago Bulls back in the 90s. He was the one who kind of broke up that Michael Jordan core, and like Phil Jackson. So I don't know, you just say all that, but then I'm still not really sure, why are you upset at this guy? Like, is it because of Jordan Love? Like, he's provided you enough options on offense, and like the team is still pretty good. So I don't get like why you're so upset about this. Like, I agree. Like, he's not transparent at all. Like, we're confused. Like, what is he angry about? And I don't know. So we'll see what happens. Either he's going to be practicing for some team week 1, or he's going to be rehearsing for his Jeopardy appearance, because he seems more into Jeopardy at this point than playing football. I'm starting to get that vibe, but I don't know. Let's just assume he is going to play football next season. I don't like, which team do you think should make a trade? Because I don't think the situation is going to get much better. So like, which team do you think should make the trade for Aaron Rodgers, and what will the proposed trade package be? Let's start with you, Anirban.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few teams that have been linked in pretty well. The one I've seen most recently that I would anticipate more likely was the Broncos. And to be honest, I haven't like looked into that much, so I'm not totally sure what the trade package would look like. I know like Washington football team was kind of considering, but I feel like that's probably less likely. I know the Browns have kind of indicated that their future is in Baker Mayfield, and they will not really pursue Aaron Rodgers. So I guess off the top of my head, like Denver Broncos, but I guess I don't really have the experience to really say more than that.
Yeah, I mean, the Broncos went after Peyton Manning after he left the Colts, though that was like more of an amicable split. This is like kind of a nasty split. But yeah, I don't know. Lawson, what do you think? Like, it's kind of interesting, right? Because the last time the Bears got a disgruntled quarterback, it was Jay Cutler, right? So from the Broncos. So I don't know. What do you think? Where do you think Aaron Rodgers is heading in 2021?
I think, I kind of had to agree with the Denver Broncos, but I think personally he would want to go to the 49ers. But
they offered a draft pick. Like, they offered a package, right? They offered the number 3 pick and then some other players as well. Like, I would have done that if I'm the Packers, if this guy's that pissed. But so you're saying 49ers, but you say 49ers is ideal, but Broncos is the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if they could, well, in my opinion, like best trade would be giving their young quarterback to the Packers that they just drafted.
Oh, Trey Lance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be it. So then you should have Trey Lance and Jordan Love back-to-back years. That would be a great way to like. Okay, yeah, that'd be interesting. Actually, I would actually consider that if I'm Green Bay, because I don't want this type of like negativity in the locker room. Like, I don't know, Ujan, where do you think he's heading?
Yeah, I think Denver seems the most likely. Considering he's actually from California, I would want to say that he wants to be like in the West Coast. So I don't think he would go to the Chargers, because they already got Justin Herbert there. The Rams, we know what the Rams did earlier in the offseason in trading for Matthew Stafford. So I was wondering if Vegas would make sense, in the sense that, it's a new stadium, and then they'll be likely be welcoming fans.
Then you have Mahomes versus Rodgers twice a year too.
I mean, yeah, exactly. That would sound quite intriguing, at least if you ask me.
Wait, what if you're New Orleans and then you have Brady versus Rodgers twice a year now for the division?
Well, that would also be quite interesting. I mean, it seems as though Denver just seems to have like a knack of like getting quarterbacks. I think it's maybe because John Elway's in the front office, and guys who want to at least make a name for themselves in the league just want to do it in front of John Elway or something. So Denver makes the most sense, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody comes out of not really nowhere, like maybe like a Vegas or something, in the sense that I don't know what the deal is with Vegas and Derek Carr, in the sense that the Raiders could have gone to the playoffs, but they didn't. So, and then when you have John Gruden over there, whether he would like to have Aaron Rodgers as his QB, but right now Denver just makes the most sense.
Yeah, no, I said Denver. I mean, Denver, obviously, I've heard that a lot. I mean, they need a quarterback because Drew Lock isn't very good. But I mean, I think New Orleans, that's like the team that could really, like, they're kind of in this like win now mode because they lost Drew Brees. They have like Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas. They still have a really good defense. They're really in that win now mode. And that's why they were in the mode with Drew Brees, right? And Drew Brees just retired. So I could see them just trying to overwhelm Green Bay, like just giving up like their future, basically, like next like 3 years, first round picks or whatever Green Bay asks. I could see them doing that because they probably just want to win the Super Bowl now, because they're realizing that with their current status with Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill, they're not going to compete with Tampa at all. So they need a guy like Aaron Rodgers at least to make things interesting. I could see New Orleans like really overwhelming them. I don't know if they should, because again, like I've said, this guy is not a very positive influence in that clubhouse or organization, but I don't know. So we'll see. I say New Orleans, but I think Denver is sort of like where, I don't know. I'm seeing, apparently like I was reading somewhere in the betting markets that Denver's like the favorite, and I don't know, they have some insight, so maybe they know some stuff that's going on. So yeah, Denver would be very interesting, because then it would be like basically what, Denver versus Tampa next, or no, Denver and Kansas City would probably be the top 2 teams in the league next year, at least in the AFC. And then the NFC is just, I don't really see anyone down playing, like getting by Tampa at this rate. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But anyways, yeah, that's a lot of interesting football discussion we got. And let's just talk about the Red Sox quick. I don't know, did you guys hear about how Wade Miley yesterday, he threw the 4th no-hitter of the season? It's only May 7th. It was May 7th yesterday. Today's May 8th, obviously. But 4 no-hitters already this early into the season. I don't know what's going on, but I don't think that's like good. It's almost like you're over baseball, like what, they underjuice the baseballs now. And as a result, like we've already seen this type of like these types of outings. Like, I don't know, do you think it's like getting overcompensated at this point?
Well, here's the thing. We had this discussion about a month ago about whether baseball is losing popularity. Remember that? I just feel like this might bring up the popularity to the extent that, oh yeah, these guys are pitching no hitters. Like, this is, I mean, do you want to see good pitching? It would be ideal for people who want to see good pitching, but not ideal for people who would like to see home runs. And I'm
as a fan, don't you care more about the home run? Does like a strikeout get you as pumped up as a home run does?
Well, I personally would like to see home runs, but if my team has a pitcher throwing a no-hitter, I'd love to see that though.
Yeah, I don't know, like these, also the guys who are doing it, like Wade Miley, it was John Means of the Orioles, like some guy, I mean, I don't know, like I haven't heard of these guys before. There's already been 4 of them, and it's just kind of, it feels like it's almost like an overcorrection now. Like it's one thing to kind of limit the home runs to make it kind of a little more exciting, but now it's almost seemed like the change they made to underjuice the baseballs drastically caused the opposite reaction, which is just making it impossible as a hitter to get good contact. And as a result, it's really hard to hit now. Like strikeouts have become like the new like norm. Like it's, I don't know. I don't really like that trend. Like the Red Sox are obviously, but let's just go to the Red Sox quick. They've been playing pretty good now. Like, are you buying them more as a contender? I know you've been kind of skeptical on the Ujan. Like, do you buy them more now as like a contending team?
A little bit. But like I said, it's still like early May. There's still 162 games. We're not even through 62. I mean, yes, they have the best record in baseball, and I like that. Don't get me wrong. But like, it's just a matter of, number 1, can they keep this up? Number 2, can they stay healthy the entire season? And number 3, can they keep it like sustain it in the playoffs when it really matters? I mean, you can have the best record in baseball and just get dumped in the playoffs and nobody's going to really care. I mean, yes, last time they won the World Series, they were the best team in baseball. I understand that, but it's just a matter of. But I like the. I'm more optimistic. Let me put it that way.
Like it, so you've basically become more optimistic than the start of the season, right? Like from last week onwards.
A little bit. I wasn't too happy with the performances that in Texas, though.
In Detroit, I didn't like that Detroit performance either. The 3 games, like they won the last game like 12-9. They allowed 9. The Tigers are not a good offense, and they allowed like 9 runs to the Tigers. The day before, they lost an extra innings, like 6-5, I think. And like I don't know, in like the game before, I think it was like 11-7. These were high scoring games. Like that's a bad Tigers offense in the lineup. So it kind of like brought to light like the pitching, the potential issues that could come about. Like this, the rotation is like okay, like Evaldi, these guys are decent, but they're not that great. Like they're still like, and I think it's just showing like sometimes they've kind of come down to earth a little bit. Like Garrett Richards, obviously, he's been doing better recently, but this rotation, I still think like if this team really wants to contend this season, they're going to need to add like one more starting pitcher. Maybe Chris Sale comes back, and I don't think he's going to come back this season. But I don't know, Anirban, what are your thoughts on the Red Sox? Are you buying them more now, or do you still think that this is like they're not going to make the playoffs?
Oh, I absolutely. I mean, I have no reason not to buy them, right? Like, I mean, like, is this? I remember you guys were talking about this like last week, right? And like, is this kind of the performance level for the entire season? That's like no, right? But like, they've done everything that you can ask of them. So like, I definitely see them being like a playoff contender. Though I think the injury thing is going to come up pretty big, right? Because they're only a few games really ahead in the AL East right now, and they have been relatively healthy, whereas like a team like the Yankees have been kind of hit pretty hard with injuries kind of early on. So it's interesting to see, I mean, injuries are kind of inevitable. There's kind of just a random thing. We're gonna see how that happens. I mean, in terms of our hitting, like I've been really, it's been really impressive, right? We've had like JD Martinez really playing out of his mind this season. We've had Bobby Dalbec, who's having a really big slump before, really lighted up actually a few days ago. And he actually cited Frankie Cordero's actually resurgence as well.
Oh my goodness, Frankie Cordero! Don't get me started on this guy. This guy is like, they traded him for like they got him for Andrew Benintendi. This guy is like a horrible hitter. Like I know he had like a good game the other day, but he's just been very frustrating to watch. Like some of these guys, like I mean, obviously, yeah, JD Martinez, Xander Bogaerts, Rafael Devers, they're like your core. But then the rest, and Alex Verdugo, like and Christian Vasquez, like they have a good core. But some of these guys, like Frankie Cordero is just a miss. Like I don't see like really how this guy is like anything more than like at best like a 200 hitter for this team. But I don't know, Lawson, I do want to bring this up because I know you're not like a big baseball fan, but do you feel like, I mean, as baseball as a sport, do you feel like it's like kind of like decline in popularity? Like I know you're like not like a big fan or anything, but do you feel like what makes you sort of like not as into baseball as like other sports? Like is it like the pace of it, or is it something that like it could get you more into it over time?
I think it's just the pace of it for now. But playoff baseball is, I would definitely watch that, especially, the 2016 Cubs run. That was amazing.
That was a special team.
Yeah, that was a special team. So I would say I was definitely into baseball then. It's just, I think, with the scandal, with the Astros, all of that, it's just like giving baseball a bad reputation. And now with the baseball being, hard to hit.
Underjuiced. Yeah, it's like
I think it's definitely impacting probably a lot of people's opinions. But I think, there's always going to be fans for baseball, so I wouldn't worry about too much decline. And it's a pandemic, so.
If I could just break in really quickly about that, like I think, like I don't know about the balls and stuff, like maybe there's some change to that, but like I don't really see this as a surprising trend because baseball has been the sport that's been most in line with the trend towards optimization that we've seen, in my opinion, in the last like few decades. Like the amount of statistical analysis and stuff in baseball is really, in my opinion, pretty groundbreaking. Like I think only really in the last few years have we seen the same analytics hit like global soccer competitions, for example, right? And for baseball, like I was reading about this, right? Like I believe 42, like around 43% of all pitches thrown have been breaking balls. And breaking balls are considered like the balls that have the most movement, and like they're like this is what the idea of optimization is, right? Like teams are making decisions on their rotate, like the concept of having like a pitcher go 8 or 9 innings in a game like we saw 50 years ago. That's gone. That's out the window.
That's
right?
not even 50. Wait, did you say 50 or 15?
I mean, I'm like, take your pick, right? Even 15 years ago, like complete games were a thing. And
I would say like even like 5-10 years ago they were a thing. Like I feel this is like a very new trend now. Like you have like teams like the Rays and like they have those openers, right? Like those relievers starting games.
exactly.
Like, they've kind of, and I don't like that
Exactly.
strategy. Like that doesn't cause you to win games. Like in the end, like I mean, it might cause you to like win games, but it doesn't actually. It's not like a real winning strategy. Like at the end of the day, the big spending teams are going to like win out, right? The Dodgers, the Nationals, the Red Sox. I mean, the Yankees haven't won a long time, but they've won more recently than the Athletics have and stuff like that, right? So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where, like in any sport, once people try something and they see that it works, right, everyone's going to start paying attention to it, right? So like 5 to 10 years ago, sure, maybe no one had really thought of that strategy. And then some guy came along and maybe did some number plugging with all the baseball related like computational analysis tools that are present, and now they're maybe like, oh hey, let's try this out. Then they try it out, and then now that's just how it's the same thing in soccer, right? Like I remember when Antonio Conte actually came to Chelsea a few years ago. I'm sure Ujan and Lawson could talk about this. Yeah, his addition of having 5 at the back was kind of a tactical revolution, and it really drove other teams like Arsenal even to try that structure for a bit. So people try what works, and once it works, like it's in the best interest of every team to try to do that same optimization. Like if you're a baseball team and you're competing, why, if you see that the strikeout or like if you see that breaking balls are so important, why wouldn't you focus on a pipeline that directly gets a pitcher who throws a ton of breaking balls or who can consistently do like what Garrett Cole does? That's not something that was around 10 years ago, maybe because people weren't looking for it, but that's just what happens with innovation and competition.
no, that's a good point. Like, I mean, I guess like this is now going to the broader area of analytics, and I think I actually want to like discuss this a little more. So, like, I don't know, Lawson, are you okay with like more analytics being introduced, not just to baseball, obviously, but like soccer, football, like the sports you would watch? Like, do you think you're in support of these extra analytics like being involved? Like, even if it kind of like might change the game, like, are you okay with that?
I think, yeah, I think I'm okay with it as long as like it's keeping with the integrity of the game and you're not going too much outside of it. Definitely, like if you want to be the best team or just win something and be more popular and have like a good business side to that team, I think doing what you can, if that means getting more into this analytic stuff, then I guess that's what you need to do.
Yeah, definitely. Ujan, what is your take on analytics introducing sports, not just baseball, like any of these sports? Like, do you think like you'd be in favor of it, even if it meant like the game is changed?
I would, in the sense that it adds a new strategy to how you think about the game. Like if you like, for example, if you look into baseball, like you want to look into like, oh, like if you want to bring in a lefty pitcher versus a lefty hitter, like if a lefty pitcher does well against a lefty hitter, you'd want to bring in that reliever, let's say. Or but then the only thing is it could at least speed up, like make the game go a little longer, but it's still within the rules. Like you're trying to make a strategy based on what you know. And I'm okay with teams doing it, just kind of as long as it kind of just doesn't. I mean, I'm okay with like as long as when it just kind of like changes the game, because you want to see new ideas to the game, especially with baseball being like one of the America's pastime. You know what I mean? So, and it's true for any sport. Like you can change. Like for example, Steph Curry was just hitting so many threes, and nowadays the NBA is just more of like a 3-point game. Like that's just kind of how it is nowadays. So there's just a couple of the examples.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think within reason, I think analytics should be included. Like, I don't think it should be the only thing that these managers use to like make decisions. Like, I think it should be meant as like a supplementary tool. So, like, I don't know. I don't like it. Like last year in the World Series, it was like Blake Snell. He was pitching great, but then third time through the lineup, like the analytics said that's the time to take him out, and he was dealing. And then they take him out. The Dodgers end up scoring 3 runs and they end up winning the World Series in the end. That was it. So it's been, and then the year before, the analytics said to take out, I think, Zach Greinke, and then the Nationals end up winning that World Series. Back-to-back years in the World Series clinching game, analytics have come back to burn the losing team. So that's not to say analytics are bad. I'm not saying that, but I do think that analytics should be used in addition. Like, that's why you have a manager, right? Well, what's the point of having a manager if you just have like some book that tells you what to do and everything? Like, that's not the point of this. Like, part of the game, like the beauty of the game in all these leagues is having kind of like the instinctual decision, which may not be like statistically what you go with, but you kind of go with your gut. And so I think that there's some beauty in that too, still having that and not just having analytics dictate everything. So yeah, I agree with that. But anyways, let's talk about like some soccer now. Like, I know usually we don't get a chance, but having a panel that's full of soccer fans, like, we got to talk about this. So I'm just sort of curious, like, I mean, we weren't actually able to have any of you guys on. What are your thoughts on that whole Super League meltdown that happened? Like, it was there one day, next day it was gone. It's like that meme, I think, from The Simpsons, where the guy comes into this room and then just leaves. Like, it just seemed like that was what the Super League was like. I don't know. Like, Nearby, let's hear your thoughts on this first. I just want to hear, like, what went on.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ujan and Lawson can both attest to the fact that I was not a fan in the slightest. I was, in fact, incredibly upset. I mean, I first started off by being very upset at Arsenal just because, as an immediate target of my frustration. But I think it's important to make a distinction here because, it is fair to point out, for example, that Arsenal is not a top 6 team. It hasn't been for like a year or two, and I hope it can get back up there. But like the point I'm trying to make is that the criticism of the Super League should not be that teams like Arsenal are in it. It should be that it exists in the first place. It is absolutely ridiculous to me, the concept of getting 300 million, which is currently 3 times the revenue you can get for winning the Champions League, for doing absolutely nothing and having absolutely no consequences attached to it. The other thing is that it was a decision that was clearly made only and for the owners. The players and managers found out literally when the rest of us did, or maybe even after that. And when you think about like guys like Florentino Perez and who was really he was trying to make it the brainchild, right? You think about like, I mean, at the end of the day, it is all about the money, right? Look at the 3 teams that are still left: Juventus, Barcelona, Madrid. Why do you think that's the case? Juventus is knowing that their ratings have been going down the Serie A for a long time because it's not competitive. This year was obviously a change, but the Serie A is no longer.
With Cristiano Ronaldo, they have been losing ratings.
The Serie A has been, I mean, I'm sure like maybe my other 2 like people here can attest to this, but it seems from my understanding that Serie A has been declining in popularity, and with it, the amount of TV viewership revenue is coming with it. Barcelona is in a financial crisis, which is aided by really incompetent manager, like presidentialship that from, I believe, I'm not going to get this guy's name right, Bartomeu, perhaps. But like, and then Madrid, apparently, according to Perez, is also like has a really dire financial situation we didn't know about. And then you contrast it with the Premier League, right? Why do you think that like the Premier League is currently the most watched league in the world, is the one generating the most revenue? You have teams like City and Chelsea, which frankly have no need for this because they're in excellent financial shape, courtesy of their courtesy of money coming from, in some cases, maybe dubious resources. But that's besides the point. I do think it really highlights a huge issue of people just failing to really read the room and really an idea by owners without any thought about what it entails for fans. Like, if you hear the defense that Florentino Perez gave, he's like, yeah, kids don't really like watching soccer anymore. Let's make the matches shorter, like this is
like
the
a
president
type argument.
This is the president of Real Madrid saying this. It's outrageous. And then you have Arsenal's head guy, Stan Kroenke. His son was like, we thought fans would like to see Arsenal play Barcelona like a lot more. And then, clearly we didn't want to do that. So it was a failure to read the room. It was in the time of a COVID pandemic. It was a really bad signaling and like literally the worst time possible. And the reason I told Ujan this, actually, the reason I was really angry at Arsenal specifically was this is what Stan Kroenke has been doing for the last 9 months. He's been locked up making plans for this, about like he was one of the drivers. He was going to be the vice chairman apparently of this new European Super League. Instead of the time when our club is in the darkest moment in my living memory, probably in, I don't know, Ujan, what do you think? Like a century? When have we been this bad? Like the last 56, like we're breaking records every week. It seems we got a double loss over Brighton. We got a double loss over Everton. We've had 10 I believe it was 10 games at home where we haven't scored a goal, 13 league defeats. It's been a catastrophic season for us. And to think that this guy has been doing this instead of actually showing any kind of actual urgency and investment in the club, it is ridiculous. I mean, Stan Kroenke didn't come to Arsenal's European final against Chelsea, which was our first final in over a decade. And here, him and Josh Kroenke are trying to act like they care so much about what us fans think. It's absolutely and I'm glad it happened in a way, because now the lighting's in the room, right? Everyone knows what even guys like John Henry, let alone Florentino Perez, we know what they want now, and we know what their ultimate goal is. Their goal is to commodify soccer and turn it into
or even the Chelsea owner, right? Like Roman, and then Manchester City. All these guys are really like, I just feel like in soccer ownership, like especially in the EPL, most of these guys are not like, what like Manchester United, right? They're owned by the Glazers, American based. John Henry owns Liverpool, American based. Arsenal owned by Stan Kroenke, American based. Tottenham, I don't know who owns Tottenham, but like
Daniel Levy, which is Lawson, is he American?
No, actually they have British owners, so they're owned by Joe Lewis and Daniel Levy. Yeah,
but they were one of the Super League teams too, right? Tottenham as well.
Right.
So like, I just feel like
yeah.
what happens is it's almost like a divide, at least among the EPL, because there's so much like American-based owners. They don't really have an attachment to their teams the way, like, I don't know, like they would to their football teams, right? Like, I don't think like Jay Glazer cares about Manchester United the way he cares about his Tampa Bay Buccaneers, even before the Super Bowl, like this past season. I don't think Stan Kroenke cares about Arsenal the way he would care about his Rams, right? Like, I don't think John Henry cares about Liverpool the way he cares about his Red Sox. These guys are just viewing the European soccer market as a money grab for them, right? So I think that's what's like I've sort of seen, and that's what made obvious by this, right? Like, you just have this type of like, they're just showing the true colors at this point. Like, these American owners going in and getting going into European soccer as an investment. They view it as an investment. They don't care about the fans and how they feel, right? Like, I mean, do you agree with that, Lawson?
I mean, in my opinion, it's just the worst human qualities just coming out. I mean, the whole idea is a disgrace. You know, they're trying to ruin football. I mean, the game's gonna be gone, and like, I can't believe it actually happened. Like, those 2 days, I was just like refreshing the soccer Reddit, and I'm just trying to see news. It was like crazy drama. That's all I can remember. But you know, it's just a disgrace to football fans, and you know, it's like they don't even care about the game anymore. And just to see that, it just like makes you think like, what are these guys just living for? Just money, you know? Like, I was so enraged, and you know, as a Tottenham fan, you know, I know we haven't had much success, and maybe having that income of cash will help us push the boundaries. But even in this participating in the Super League, we're going to be the last place team probably. So we might get money. The owners can fill their pockets with money, but at the end of the day, the fans, it's all about the fans, you know, like, and if they don't help it become a good experience for the fans, then what's the point of the game?
Yeah, I feel like those apologies were all very fake as well afterward. Like, John Henry, listening to him talk, the most monotone voice, I was like, come on, dude. Like, he sounded sad, not because he enraged the fans. He sounded sad because he missed out on the money. That's what I got out of John Henry. So I don't know, Ujan, what is your take on this all? Like, the whole disaster that was the Super League. And do you think like this kind of overshadows now that Champions League finals, since you have Manchester City versus Chelsea, two teams that would have been included in the Super League? Obviously they backed out. Like, do you think that kind of overshadows this type of game coming up?
It doesn't necessarily overshadow per se. It kind of overshadows the fact that Chelsea have been performing really well under Thomas Tuchel, like since he came in, and Man City with their superpower team of like backed by billionaires, just getting whoever they want. At least that's what it feels like. But overall, going back to the Super League, I think somebody hit the nail on the head that these American owners, they don't know what the English culture is like. And I'm not going to say that I know the English culture myself because I haven't been to a Premier League game. But there are fans who, at least if you follow like some of the popular like YouTube fan channels, they go up and down the country every week just to see their team play. They can go all the way up to Newcastle from London and then one week they'll go south down to like Bournemouth or when they were in, or as far east as Southampton, and sometimes into Swansea for these long drives, and obviously the earlier kickoffs don't really help, at least in UK time. But like that part is part of like the culture of UK football, in the sense that you go to and then plus like if you go, like one of the things I love about the UK football is all these like tiny stadiums. Just imagine like every time, I always look forward to like the FA Cup games, like when some lower league team is hosting and they have like these really small stadiums and like you see people's houses in the background. I just love those. And the fact that you just take these super league, like make the super league, and then like you have all these like big nice stadiums, and then it just kind of takes away the fact that you can't have a team like Leicester City come up and just take the league by storm and have all these underdog stories. Those will just be gone, and you don't really like that. You just want to give you want to give these other teams a chance, even the slimmest of chances. And I think it's part of the reason why fans are protesting against the owners. Like Man United fans stormed Old Trafford before the game against Liverpool, and that led to the postponement of that game. And actually that hurts Man United now because they have to play 3 games in 5 days. That doesn't really do them any good. Arsenal fans are going to the Emirates. At least there's supposed to be a planned protest before the game against West Brom tomorrow, the 9th of May. And there was already one before the Everton game. I think it seems as though the fans know who the American owners are, and they want change at the top of the club.
Can I just jump in really quickly? I want to ask actually a question to Ujan and Lawson specifically, just because I know you guys have been following, and actually Amartya too, just about the Super League, right? Like, what exactly do you think about, like, it just seems kind of strange how quickly this thing fell apart and almost how poorly it was planned. Like, on one hand, these guys got a massive loan investment from JP Morgan, which they're now having to kind of hilariously pay millions for breaking in the first place. But like, aside from that, I mean, when they released it, right, they said, oh, we're going to have 3 other founding members. We haven't chosen them yet. We'll do that later. We'll have like 3 people come up every year or down every year. We haven't figured that out yet. We'll figure that out later. You know, they didn't figure out broadcasters. They didn't, it's so strange, like how quickly they went public with this, and also like how terribly they managed to like misjudge reactions. And I understand part of that's culture, but you think about the fact that I was reading, these guys actually hired a PR firm to go and look at analysis for how people would probably react to this. And that PR firm apparently gave the info that would be positive, right? So like, what do you think is the basis for such a poorly made decision that they had
to fire that PR firm if they said that was a positive
absolutely
reaction?
Yeah, absolutely. So like the PR firm definitely an issue, but what do you think is like, how do they misread the room so badly? And yeah, just, well, that is my main question. Like, why do you think they misread it, and why do you think they went public in this kind of ridiculous manner with Florentino Perez on random late night TV shows and stuff like that?
So I think, because the day after, I think they announced it on a Sunday, and the day after they were gonna confirm that the UEFA was gonna confirm that the Champions League is gonna be reformatted, so that there's gonna be more teams in it, as well as the whole format's gonna change. There's gonna be a lot more games, but the most important thing is that the winners are gonna get less money. So the money distributed is going to be different to how it's been distributed now. So my thinking is that it's basically about the money, and because they're not able to get more revenue out of the game, the owners are trying to come up with this plan so they can get more money and just fill their pockets, and that's a disgrace. Honestly, like, do you guys think with all the money that's already coming into the Premier League and all these bigger teams that's also in the Super League, like, the wealth disparity is just getting bigger and bigger, that the teams that are successful now are just going to keep being successful, and that kind of like makes me think, like, like it's just like I just want to see like another Leicester City type of team, win the title. That's gonna be like really rare.
Yeah, I feel like going on that, like, one of the problems is like, I don't know, this is kind of like the problem with baseball where there's no like salary cap. And I feel like in European soccer, like the problem is that like you have like so many different leagues based in different countries. Right? Like it's like what, like you have EPL in England, then or the United Kingdom, UK, and then you have like what, Serie A in Italy. You have Ligue 1 in France, and then you have like what's the other one? And La Liga, obviously. Those are like the four big ones, right? In Spain, it's like you have like four different countries, like sort of like players can kind of like. I mean, and then you have other ones too, obviously. But I'm talking about the four biggest ones, which were kind of involved here, right? All the Super League teams were within those four, right? Am I right there, or was there anything else?
Yeah, no, but there was no
Okay.
teams from the French league or the German leagues, but
Or
Oh, I
Dutch,
forgot-
or
I
Dutch.
forgot.
or Dutch. Yeah.
I forgot Bundesliga. Yeah, that's a big one with Bayern Munich. Yeah, so like, I mean, among like these like types of leagues, like it's just you can't really control like it's harder, right? Because like I don't know, it's not as easy, I guess, to have like a salary cap in that way. Just when you have like movement among like so many different leagues, like in baseball, you can kind of do that, but I guess it's just like harder to enforce that if you have like players coming and going from like really, like, I mean, as many like there's like really like 20 or so leagues of like possible movement. So maybe for that reason, it's like harder for them to like enforce like what's going on. So maybe in their context, like their plan could be to have like a type of league where all these teams are sort of in this league, and then as a result of that, you're able to sort of like have movement in a more ordinary manner. I don't think they were going to do that in this case, but like a proposed resolution, I don't think like a super league necessarily is a bad idea per se. I think it's just the way they designed it. Like I think it would be good if they had like some form of like kind of getting in and out of the super league, kind of like how the Champions League sort of works right now, where like you have to actually play well, and then if you do really bad, you're at risk of like losing out on a spot. I think that's the issue with the super league. I think it's just like it was like a closed gated community where once you're there, you're basically there no matter how good or bad. So that's why Leicester would never get to go in. I think that's like the flaws like with the Super League format. I don't think a Super League is necessarily a bad idea. And if in a way, that's really what the Champions League kind of is at the end of the day. It's like a Super League, except it's not a gated community at the end of the day. It's also you're able to have teams move in and out depending on their performance. So I think it's the way they designed it, and like the fact that their intentions were so clear that they just cared about the money here. I don't think the Super League is bad. I think like if you do anything like that, I think it's more like they should enforce some sort of like salary cap guideline in all these leagues. Maybe you can do it in each of these leagues and say at most you're able to only have like 3 transfers every year. You should have some limit, right? Because you shouldn't just have Manchester City and all the owners with like really rich pockets be able to basically outbid and get anyone they want. You should have a limit, right? Because NFL has that, NBA has that. I think NHL has that too. MLB doesn't, and that's a flaw with MLB. But I don't know. Like, do you think that's like a thing? Like the Super League isn't the problem; it's just the way this one was designed.
Yeah, I'll go on this one. To an extent, yes, but I just don't really understand. Like, here's the thing. This is going back to the fact that there are all these American like owners running these clubs. The American, like, if you think about the American sports, like your MLB, your NFL, NBA, NHL, even MLS, I'll add that. Like, there's a certain way that it's run here. It's just like everybody has its own schedule, then they have a playoffs, and then they determine a champion. The same teams come back next season. Like, that's just the American way. It's accepted. It's been happening for a long time. Like, that's just, and the fans accept it. People still go to all these games, right? I mean, even before a pandemic. But like in England, like it's this promotion relegation thing. It's part of their culture, and as an American fan, I embrace it. I mean, I want to. It just kind of adds a different dimension that you don't see in American sports, or really. I mean, I wouldn't say North American sports because Mexican league has promotion relegation, and so does South American leagues. But I would just say it's more like just a U.S. kind of thing. But this idea of promotion relegation just like kind of really intrigues me as just from an American standard, from an American fan point of view, in the sense that you don't get to see this because if you're if for hypothetically, if the Patriots just don't do well, or if you're a fan of the Jaguars, you're 1-15. Like if you have like a second division of American football, the Jaguars would be in that. But no, you get the number 1 draft pick and you have a chance to rebuild. I mean, that, like I said, it's part of the, it's kind of like the American sports way of going about it, and everyone just kind of accepts it. England just has its way where you have your culture of promotion relegation. There's so many teams up and down the country. It's accepted. Even the global fans accept it. Even the local fans in England don't want to see it changed. And I think that's what's causing all this frustration from the Super League.
Can I ask you a question, Ujan? So kind of relate to like the culture aspect too. Would you also say that like the I guess for me also another thing the Super League seems to represent is kind of the goal of a lot of these, again, like American owners, or at least people with American business viewpoints and interest in profit, is to have this one, just to make it really easy, right? For a fan, you're just watching the Super League. That's all you care about, right? Just like in the US, right? Versus the way it works in England, along with the aspect you're talking about promotion relegation, a big part is having multiple competitions, right? If I'm already out of the league, okay, we have the FA Cup. You can have a fun run there. If I'm out of that, okay, even the Capital One Cup, right? Which obviously like wasn't always that big, but in the last few years definitely has been. And I feel like that's something that I would love. I love cup runs, right? I love watching the FA Cup, just like you said, for the reasons you described. Would you say that's also a culture difference, that for an American owner like Stan Kroenke's like, you know what, like maybe something like a Super League, we're just one thing to watch. Maybe that's just like, maybe since Stan Kroenke's obviously coming with only his viewpoint and doesn't really probably know that much about others. Do you think that's one also thing that leads to the Super League, as the idea of just one monolithic competition?
I think so. In the sense that, you know, you have less games and more money. I'm just trying to figure out where this kind of lies, because like after this whole like news came out, like the Premier League said, we don't accept this. UEFA said, we don't accept this. Like everybody was just completely against it. Like
even Boris Johnson.
Sorry?
I was just saying, even Boris Johnson and like Emmanuel Macron, like big guys in the government.
Right. And like I just didn't really understand the thought process behind kind of changing the game in this, like the way it's accepted. Like even I mean, I brought up England, but say in like Spain, Germany, like I would say Germany, for example, like you have a lot of fans that go to like second, third division games. And like these are like these people, like these supporters are like local to the city or town they're in. They want to see their team like go up the ranks of their respective nation. And like, because for them, like going up to like, say for example, like Leeds, when they came up this year, they hadn't come up in like 15, 16 years. Just imagine how those supporters would feel just being in the Premier League. I mean, yes, they can be able to go into the stadium because of a global pandemic. That's a different story. But just the fact that, you know, you can at least go from like the fourth division to the first division in real life. It's not like some video game where you're playing like Football Manager or FIFA on Xbox, where you can just like buy all the players you want and like be up there in 3 years or something like that. It's like, it's a slow, gradual process. And the thing I want to say, in German football, they have this model where it's like a 51-49. Like the fans own 51% of the club's stakes. So they have a say in how the club is run. I don't necessarily think it would work in the Premier League, but at least the fans should have some say in terms of how they should run it. Because like I said before, these fans go to the games up and down the country, like over all the way to like, I mean, Arsenal fans went all the way from London to Baku for a Europa League final. Like I went to a preseason game down to DC, and that was a preseason game from the Boston area. Like people go immense lengths just to see their team play. And so I think they should have at least some percentage of ownership in the club in terms of, and have a say in how it's run.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, I'm glad the idea is gone now. I mean, this format was just clearly like a cash grab and clearly like insensitive to like what anyone outside of their like like personal group really cared about. So I'm glad it's gone. Like it's good. I mean, this was clearly just like a greed. It just shows the greed and everything like that. Like it's kind of like everything. Like we kind of look at some of these owners sometimes. Like they don't really care about the team. They care about the money. And like for a lot of these owners who like aren't based out of England or just like I guess like for the La Liga, like Florentino Perez and Barcelona, they're both based in Spain, right? I know Chelsea's owner is Roman Abramovich. I think he's Russian, right? So I guess that's a little different. Like at least that's still like European based or like Asian based, like European Asian based, depending on the Russia like area he's from. But I think that's like the point. Like I think that's what we sort of nailed today. Like these guys just sort of cared about that, and in the end they got exposed, and now they're sort of trying to basically backtrack and trying their best to sort of say, hey, we actually care about you guys a lot. Clearly they don't care about that. Nobody should believe that. And I mean, yeah, I mean the Glazers, their fans want them to sell them, and I mean, I hope Stan Kroenke and you guys get better owners at some point who actually care about the team and not just about their pockets getting bigger and bigger and richer, right?
The crazy thing is Barcelona, Madrid, and Juventus, they're doubling down and they want to continue with the Super League idea. Like they're in massive
it's
debt.
It's a 2-year ban then, right? Like a 2-year Champions League. I mean, go ahead and do that.
Rumor. Then. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of these teams deserve punishment, but they shouldn't be punishing the players, the managers, or the fans. They should be punishing the owners. That's what I think should happen.
Yeah, the players, like I think Tony Cruz, like he said like he was against it, and other players were also against it. So I don't think the players should be punished at all. I think if anything, yeah, you should say that, tell the owners like you're suspended from this thing, like you can't run, and if you like we will force you to sell the team. Like you can do that, right? Like I mean, we've seen that before. Like, I mean, it's kind of rare in some cases, but we've seen the league and like I mean the NBA with the Clippers forcing Donald Sterling to sell the team. Obviously that was like a different situation what happened, but like the league can definitely have the power and all the other, but I guess it's a little trickier because in this case all the other owners would have to say we want this guy to step down, and it's hard to do that when the two most top clubs in La Liga are the ones who are sort of the most influential, probably are the ones you're trying to go against, right? So that's going to be a problem for La Liga, I think. Barcelona and Madrid, those are, that is kind of La Liga in a way, right? Like if you get rid of those two guys, then the influence and other consequences for those guys is probably going to be swift too, right?
Yeah, perfect. And just like I said earlier, it all comes down to the balance sheets, right? The Italian, like Juventus, there's a reason why they're still in here, and it's because of the money. Barcelona and Madrid are both in very bad finance, especially Barcelona. It had to extend like multiple of its players' wages. It just cannot afford it. I believe it was 800 million behind, because, especially with COVID, right? Like that's why, like, I mean, and the reason I'm saying this is I'm not trying to be in the mood of complimenting teams like Manchester City or Chelsea for being the first to leave, because honestly, they had the least need of even being in there in the first place. It all comes down to that, right? That's the exact same reason, like PSG, the reason, in my, like, a lot of people think the reason they didn't leave is because their owner is actually on the UEFA committee. And of course, he wouldn't want a Super League on his own too, right? So it all comes down to that. And it's all about question of how you can force them to sell. I am wondering, about whether Stan Kroenke is rethinking their position. They're publicly saying not, but apparently there's a pretty strong takeover bid happening. And with the loss of European income next year, maybe that's something they're going to think about, if it's even worth holding the asset anymore.
Yeah, definitely agree. But anyway, that's our take on soccer. Obviously, glad to hear what you guys have to say. Like, we just sort of touched upon it a couple of weeks ago when it came out that this news was like breaking. But no, glad to hear what you guys think. I agree with you. I think it's pretty outrageous that they're doing it, and I'm glad that it got stopped. And I'm glad they're getting exposed. They deserve it. They deserve every bit of criticism going their way. That's what happens when you get too greedy and you're not happy with the billions of dollars you already have in revenue. It just shows like what happens. You just stop caring, and this type of stuff happens. Well, let's just, I don't know. I just want to talk about the Celtics. I saved them from last on purpose because they are the worst team. It's an absolute disgrace what is happening with this team right now. I'm just going to light into them. Yesterday's loss to the Chicago Bulls was one of the worst, embarrassing losses. I think Brad Stevens should be fired. I am saying that now. He should be fired after the season is over. He has had 8 years. He has done absolutely nothing with this team in 8 years. I mean, by nothing. Okay, yeah, they got to the conference finals. I am done with this guy as coach. I don't have it's nothing personal against him. I like him as a guy. Like, he's a good player. Sorry, he's a good coach. But clearly the team isn't registering with him anymore. Like, the last night's loss was absolutely embarrassing. And Ujan, do you remember last week when I was making fun of Jason Tatum for holding that 60 sign? Remember I said that this is like a consistency thing? Yesterday against the Chicago Bulls, who are a terrible team, missing the playoffs, he had 3 for 15. He was 3 for 15 against the Chicago Bulls with 9 points. Was he holding up that sign then, which says 9 afterward? I don't like it when players do that type of stuff, unless like you can actually back it up. Will Chamberlain could do it. He was a champion. Jason Tatum isn't a champion yet, and I don't like that type of attitude that they've shown. So I think Brad Stevens should be fired. Do you think he should be fired after the season?
It's hard to. I mean, I don't really want to kind of get into this point like, oh, let's fire him like right now. I mean, considering the fact that they're all the way down towards the play-in part, like I can definitely see where you're coming from. And to me, I've personally just kind of had enough with the fact that they think Eastern Conference Finals is enough. And personally, I think he should go after the season as well. Look, the Celtics were from 2016-17, they were the 1 seed. And now 4 years later, they're looking to just hang on to a play-in round. Like, is this really how far down the franchise has come? Like, just with the same coach. I mean, yes, they'll have different players.
And improved, like, and it's like a better team now on paper. You have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are both all-stars and like legitimately like top 15 players in the league. That 16-17 team was. It was just Isaiah Thomas, who was like, we always knew he was kind of limited in the end of like how far he could bring you in to like a championship. The best he could do was that Eastern Conference Finals. Al Horford was a decent role player, but Brown and Tatum are more talented than Thomas and Horford. And the trajectory I would have expected from year 4 of Tatum is what Utah is doing this season with Donovan Mitchell, drafted in the same year, 2017. The Jazz are the best team in the league, or maybe they're not anymore record-wise, but they're among the top. That's where I'd expect Boston to be. They're the 7th seed. This is absolutely embarrassing. And I think changes need to be made now. Like, I've defended Brad Stevens for long enough. He's done a bad job. And look, I mean, again, it's nothing personal with him. I like him as a person. Like, he's a great guy and everything like that, but you need to make a move at this point. The players aren't listening to him anymore. And yesterday is absolutely like embarrassing. Like, it is probably the low point of the season, losing by 22 to that Bulls team. Like, there's no excuse for that at this point.
And the fact that the Bulls were playing a second game of a back-to-back, and the Celtics just didn't really seem to just turn up until they tried to make some run in the fourth quarter when they were down 20, and they got it down to 8.
But they lost by 22. So they ended up even like, more embarrassing. Their best play is the quarter when they ended up losing the quarter at the end, and they end up losing by more. That's like embarrassing for this team.
It really is. And I just personally think that the Celtics are just going to be like, if they somehow manage to get into like the 6th seed, they're going to lose in the first round. I mean, I hate to say it, but I just don't really see them putting up that much of a fight.
They'd have to play Brooklyn in round 1, right? Okay, they would probably. It might just be like, but it's probably like 3-0, and then they just forfeit the last game out of just like a championship, like gentleman sweep. They just give Brooklyn that last game. I don't want to see this team in the playoffs. I actually want them to lose in the play-in round now, because I've seen enough from this team to realize that they're not going to go anywhere anymore. This is like the type of team, right? They tease you, right? Like, they had that game against the Warriors, the Spurs, who are, by the way, not really even great teams. Tatum had like 44 against the Warriors, against Steph Curry. Everyone was talking 60 points against a terrible Spurs team, completely forgetting that we were down 32 to a team that is terrible. The Spurs are not a good team. I mean, they're not terrible. They're not good. And then you have that 60. I had that. That's what my issue was with holding that 60 on this paper side, because I knew, like, come on, like, this is a regular season game. Like, don't do that stuff now. So I don't know. I just want the season to be over. This has been an absolutely horrible season. I don't know. Anirban, do you have any thoughts on the Celtics team? Do you see like any reason for us to watch them in the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, it's been disappointing. I think you guys have pretty much covered the main perspectives. I mean, obviously, like, as you know, someone who, like, for the Celtics, like, I do want to see them go far, but yeah, it's hard to see that happening right now. And yeah, I think you guys really touched on everything.
Lawson, I know, like, as a fellow Chicago, we were ripping the Bulls, but it must be a little tough, right? Because the Bulls used to be pretty good, and they've kind of fallen off, right, since over the years.
I definitely had some playoff hopes for this season, but they need to step up more in a real way and show what they showed against the Celtics. Even if the Celtics are in a bad way right now, the Bulls just need to keep going.
It's been a couple of years, right, since they made the playoffs. I think it was
Yeah,
like the last
yeah,
time was
definitely.
like 2017. Yeah, I mean, obviously Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, those were like the days when that team was like pretty good. Like they always like stood up to LeBron, even though they could never beat him. They were still like giving him trouble. So they gave them that was like the physical Bulls team. And that's what I wish the Celtics had that type of presence right now, because that's what they had heart, and the Celtics have none of that right now. They just sort of give in when things get too difficult. So yeah, I don't know. But anyway, that's going to be our episode for this week. Obviously, we touched upon a lot of stuff. As always, follow us on the CV Update podcast on Instagram, and you can also catch us on YouTube. Subscribe to us. Have a great rest of your week, rest of your night, everyone, or I guess evening, depending on where you're at. And we will be back next week again, as always. Until then, have a good one. Bye.